Well, greetings everyone again, and shalom to you who do believe or are at least seeking the truth. Today what I want to do, again, today I'm bringing another video here, but this one here I'm hoping will clarify how we are to pray at all times, and also the head coverings. Okay, I already brought a video on repetitive prayer, that our Father hates it. Our King now, that was the son of the King back then. But after our King had laid his life down and took it back up again by allowing himself to be nailed to a tree or a pole so he could shed his blood for all of us, he became the King. The Father took his kingship from himself like King David did with Solomon. Alright, and he took his crown and gave it to the Son. The Son is now our King in these days. I brought videos about the repetitive prayer, and you'll hear a lot of things in here that also I've spoken of in other videos, but I want to condense this down. There were some questions that were raised that I didn't quite elaborate on, and that's the purpose of this video. And for instance, to pray always isn't to walk around with a rosary in your hand or whatever, speaking the Hail Marys and the act of contritions or whatever the Catholics like to do. It's not, speaking the Our Father prayer over and over again. In fact, our Messiah said in Matthew 6 verse 9, he said, in this manner. He didn't say pray this and that's the end of it, He said in this manner or like this. Let your prayers kind of be with this as a general outline. Because right now today, and of course someone could say, oh no, the percentage is not like that. But I'm going to say 50% of the people. Okay, because there's a lot of people out there in churchianity, religianity that claim they know the truth. That are intolerant to, to bread, for instance. Okay, they got a gluten intolerance. Now the statistics are for worldwide. They don't break it down to groups of churchianity or religianity. They simply say that a certain percentage of people are allergic to gluten. And if you are or not. So I'm just going to throw out a number. 50% of the people out there in the churches or in religions may have a gluten intolerance. So what is the sense of you saying this prayer to begin with when it says to give us this day our daily bread? You can't eat it. What do? Do you go out and bring in bread and then throw it in the trash? And that's just a general way of looking at what I'm about to bring. Okay, so you want to pray for things that apply to you, and you do want to pray always. And since you may have questions on how to pray today, which is a little different than before, because our King was still on the earth and he prayed to the Father at that time. And until he let his life down and took it back up again, he commanded all men to pray to the Father. But there's also, we're supposed to be asking our King. He says, the reason you don't have is because you have not asked me. There's a new way to pray, and it's from parables and such that keep most men from doing so. Now, if you're keeping the laws and commandments, you would know, because it also talks about the Father saying that we are to trust in the one that he sent. We're to believe him. And you've got religions out there, total religion, saying, oh, well, I believe in the Jesus. And that's all they believe. And they think they get salvation from that. But in order to believe in a Messiah or in our Father, you absolutely have to believe what they say. You can't just call on some name and then walk in your own righteousness. Okay, if you're walking in your own righteousness, which is things that you think are moral and right, then you're walking wrong. Hey, boy, I keep forgetting this. Probably why my videos are so long. No, it's just the information that I bring on certain subjects that kind of delay you from having what you like because you're listening to me, and I think that's great, and you do too. You will. Anyway, I'd like to bring out how to do this, and I want to give an example of prayer for this day. So, if you'd like to pray first, and then I'll pray, and I'll go through it as I go. So put it on pause, and I'll be right back. Alright, the way to start it out is Our Father. Our Father who art in heaven. And that way you're talking to Father Yahweh. Okay? You're letting Him know that you put Him above all things, but then you also have to recognize the Son who we're supposed to be praying to. Father Yahweh, I praise you. I thank you for all things through your Son, Yahshua. So you can't get to the Father except through the Son. And after you acknowledge the Son, then you ask the Son things like, Yahshua, I pray that you'll bring peace to those who love you and love your law. I pray you'll open the minds for all those who are seeking, that they may find your truth in your word. I thank you for everything that you've provided for me this day. The air I breathe, the health that I have, for the food and the drink. It's marvelous. I praise you that it's all clean that you're providing for me, or the best that there is in this defiled earth. I thank you for these things. I also pray for those that they may understand and come to follow you and trust in you as well. You could say anything else you want. You could pray for Uncle Josh or Aunt Mary that their cancer goes away, or these other things that they got most likely from eating foods. Even when they pray for them, and they're thankful for them, they can still be poisons. And until they come to the understanding, they're not really going to receive the blessings of real healing until they do, but you can pray for them. You can pray for all of them. Then acknowledge our King at the end, and Yahshua, we ask these things. I ask this in your holy name. And because of your name's sake, I ask it be done. Because our King says he doesn't have to answer us. He doesn't have to hear us. But because of his name's sake, he's going to do so. And he will bring about what you ask if you ask it in spirit and in truth, and you put the kingdom ahead of you. Because you ask for, a new school bus or something that you can convert into RV, doesn't mean he's going to answer that, especially if you're going to use that RV to go out and tote illegal drugs and stuff in or something, or uses a portable whorehouse. He's not going to do it. Okay, so anyway, that's how you should pray. The manner of praying is a little different between men and women. Men are praying wrong. They're actually dishonoring our King when they pray at times. In the same way, the females that are praying sometimes are dishonoring not only their own husbands or their fathers or the man that's in charge over them, their head, but they also dishonor our King. So in these things, I want to bring out as quick as I can here, so I don't take up much of your time, but you'll be able to get as much understanding of this, and you'll be able to pray with much more confidence. Also, you should be wearing the tassels, the seats, the fringes, the lots. I brought a video a few weeks ago about how to make these for yourself. Please do make them. Get them worn, because you're not supposed to have crucifixes and pictures of Jesus and such on your fridge. Any of these religious articles that make you think about the kingdom, you shouldn't have. You're not even supposed to have items of worship like crescent jewelry and such. That was for the pagans, okay? All you're supposed to have to remind you of the kingdom is the Holy Scriptures, what you have in your heart and your mind and your soul and your very DNA. The more you practice, the more it comes into you, and that's the covenant. But also you have the tassels, the seats, the lots, the fringes, worn on your garments. You're supposed to do this. Numbers chapter 15 will tell you. And that is what you are to use in, crucifixes should have never been there. So I'm not going to say the tassels will replace them. They should have never been there. The tassels you should have been wearing since the day you was born. Okay, and that's just the way it is. When you grab a hold of these, then you should be thinking of the commandments and the laws and our King and wanting to please Him. That's why you wear them to begin with, all right? So anyway, we're here in Luke 18, verse 1, and our King says, "Then he spoke a parable to them, that men always ought to pray and not lose heart. Then he goes on talking about a judge. This woman comes up time after time again, and then he finally hears her. He's using that parable because when you pray, you see, she was asking the judge, which means she was praying to the judge. When you pray, you're asking. But when you ask, you're praying. That's the only way that it goes. Now here in Luke 21, verse 36, it says, "Watch therefore and pray always." Okay? Pray always. That's about as far as I'm going to, I'll read the rest. It says, "And pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man." Yes, you want to be able to stand before the Son of Man, but you can only do that if you've repented and desired to only keep the laws and the commandments. That's the only way that you can stand before the Son of Man with any kind of confidence. You're going to stand before the Son of Man if you're a murderer and a rapist or a pork eater or any sinful manner, because our King said, "Get thee hence, I never knew you, you who practice lawlessness, you who break my laws, my commandments. You break them, you don't know me, so I don't know you," is what our King is saying. So get thee hence. Now, how you would pray always is, think about it this way, people, okay? When you're in the bathroom and you're doing the number 2, most people would think, "Oh man, I wouldn't want to pray during that time." But guess what? You can't hide. You're seen. Everything you do, you're seen. What owner of a dog or a cat, let's use the dog for the example. You put him on a leash or put her on a leash, you take them for a walk, and they poop on someone's, sidewalk or their lawn. And you pay attention to it because there's laws now that you got to pick that stuff up and, get rid of it in a safe manner. So you watch the dog taking a dump on, and you're joyous even. It's like, all right, man, he's really cutting one loose there, I know he's going to be in better health and everything else from it. So you take joy in it. So even if you're in a bedroom with your wife, you shouldn't be in there with anybody else, okay? Unless you're just a friend or something, you're listening, to some great scriptures or something. There's nothing wrong with a bedroom there. But this example is if you're having relations with your wife or your husband. This is being seen in heaven, okay? There's no shame in that if you're doing it properly. And that's anything that's not anal, okay? Anything to do with the anus, if you're playing, that's just wrong. That's being a sodomite. All sodomites will be on the outside where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. But there's nothing you should be doing that you should be ashamed enough of that you wouldn't want to be before the courts of heaven, before our Father and the Son's throne. There shouldn't be anything that you're not willing for our Father through His righteous Son to see. So when you pray, you should always pray. It's not, our Father who art in heaven 16,000 times a day. No, it's when you see something, be thankful. Say, "Wow, Yahshua, that was wonderful, man. That's great." When you see somebody that's on the road broke down, and if you can't stop because you got an appointment or something, and you see someone else pulling over or whatever, pray for them. Say, "Oh, Yahshua, look, I just passed this guy, got that flat tire and stuff, but, I've got to be here because, it says I got to be there at that certain time, If you need to, call 911 and say, "Hey, there's a fella broke down on the road. Get him some help if you can." But you should pray for that fella. If you see someone in need, someone that looks like their clothes aren't the greatest and they're probably living in an alley, pray for them, Keep your prayers going always. If you see where you're thinking wrong, it's best to already be in prayer and just be thankful that the test comes and be thankful when you can overcome it. You should pray always. It's not being on your knees and such, okay? So what I basically want to explain is found in, let's also go to 2 Thessalonians in verse 11 of chapter 1. It says, "Therefore we also pray always for you, that our Father would count you worthy of this calling and fulfill all the righteous pleasure of his righteousness and the work. See, they keep talking about these works. Our King talks about the works. The prophets of old talk about works. Churchianity and religianity today tell you not to do works. But here, they're praying and fulfill all the righteous pleasure of his righteousness and the work of faith with power in the name of Yahshua and so on. So we should be always praying. Now what I want to get into here is the manner on how you should be when you pray. If you're walking down the street and such, this isn't really applying to the way to pray. You should always be praying, but specifically when you're on your knees or when you're standing there and you got your hands raised and you're praying out your mouth, you should not, if you're a man, have your head covered. You shouldn't have a kippah on there. You shouldn't cover your head with a tallit or a hat with little curly Q dealies there, the long hairs on the side, you know. You shouldn't have these things on your head, men. If you do, you're going to dishonor our King. Ladies, please listen up. If you are out on the street and you're praying with your hands up and you've got your prayers coming out your mouth, you shouldn't do it without your head covered with some covering, okay? Even if you got to take your shirt and put it up over your head, you should have it covered, and that way you're going to be honoring your husband when you do it, or the Messiah. Well, and the Messiah, because you can't honor your husband without honoring the Messiah. That's all in the part of this marriage stuff, but we're talking about how to pray. You can understand that when I read this, hopefully. But if you're going down the street, you're in the store, you're shopping, you're to pray always. You don't absolutely have to have your head covering on at that time. It's okay if you do. You know, some jobs they won't even allow you to have your head covered. But what they're speaking of, you'll see in this chapter, is, and it should bring you right back to the repetitive prayer and also the video I made about having long hair, okay, which is not a dishonor for a man to wear his hair like our King did. He told you to walk as he walked, okay, and I show those examples too. But anyway, when I finish this up, it should go right back into those videos where they'll make maybe a little more sense to you. But if you're a woman out there and you're just, you know, at your laundromat or something and you don't have your head covered, there's nothing wrong with praying inside. It says to go into your closet, shut the doors, and to pray. And that's what we should do all day long. We should be praying for things all day long. Pray for people's understanding. You see them going down the street, say, boy, Yahshua, I would. You know, Yahshua, I would. You know, with your head uncovered if it's not covered. But if you're going to pray out loud with your hands up and on your knees with your hands up or laying on the floor with your hands up, women, girls, children, cover your head. If you're female, cover your head. Okay, if you're a male, don't do it. But if you're out in the middle of the woods, man, with a bunch of guys, you're cutting down trees and it's freezing, you see your breath coming out, you know, you're spitting, it's froze before it hits the ground, it's okay to have a hat on. The thing is, if you're wearing the hat or the covering specifically to pray, then you're sinning. And you're dishonoring our King. And you need a kick right in your butt if you want to keep on doing that stuff. But you get a pat on the back if you can hear it and stop doing this. Don't dishonor our King. So let's start reading in 1 Corinthians here, 11, verse 1. It says, imitate me just as I also imitate Yahshua. You can do the same with me. This letter was a personal letter to me. I'm hoping that I can open it enough so you can understand it enough, and then it will be a personal love letter to you as well. But it was given to me so I could explain it to you. And it's no prideful thing on my part. My butt got whooped my entire life so I could do this for you. And I'm doing it without any kind of reward from anybody on this earth, okay? I'm not asking your tithes or anything. But if you want to imitate someone that's walking on the earth, please imitate me. I'm not asking you to follow me. No, I don't want a following. I want brothers and sisters. That's what I want. Those that I can rejoice with at our Father's feasts. Those I can rejoice with in our troubles and our tribulations and such. They're going to be there to help me, and I'm going to be there to help you. Okay, that's the purpose of this. So, imitate me just as I also imitate Messiah. Now, I praise you, brethren. There's nothing wrong with praising your brother or sister for doing right. Don't praise them when they're doing wrong. Don't say, oh, I love how you eat that pork sandwich, man. Oh, it's just perfect how you cut up that pork chop. No, don't praise them for those things. Man, I really like the way that you're walking. You know, you saw that you was wrong in this, and man, the way that you started doing what's right in this, it's amazing. I could be like you. There's nothing wrong with praising a brother or sister. That's also called encouraging. Okay, we should encourage one another to walk and do what's right. So 1 Corinthians 11:2. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the traditions. No, he didn't say keep the traditions. That's what our king came preaching against, and when these scriptures were translated, instead of putting laws there, they made it sound like he wants you to keep a tradition, to wash your hands 3 times before you eat something and all that. Well, our king, you know, during the time that he turned water into wine, if you take a look at it, there were 6 stone jars that were used for ritual cleansing. These men was washing their testicles off in the jars and washing out their armpits into these jars, and our king had them fill them with water. And from that came wine, okay? He did that. He was chuckling the whole time, no doubt, that he was doing this. And the owner of the house, it was most likely a priest or a Pharisee or whatever, had them stone jars for that reason. You think they would have enjoyed sucking on that wine? But they said, oh, this is the best wine ever, you know? So our king had a great sense of humor, and he always talked against the traditions. That's not what's being spoken here. It's the laws that keep the laws, not traditions. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the laws, just as I delivered them to you. But I know you to know that the head of every man is the Messiah. Yes, the head of every man is our Messiah. It's our King, Yahshua. The head of woman is man. And the head of the Messiah is Father Yahweh, our Creator. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, you know, fly swatter or anything else, okay? Kotex. If you got your head covered for the purpose of praying or whatever, you dishonor your head. Now, who's your head? It's the Messiah. Whose head is our Father? Yes, at one time, the priests over the temple were commanded to wear a head covering. Yes, there was those. But that's not for our king. That was for a service of our Father. It wasn't for everyone. The Levites are the ones that was supposed to have their head covered, not all the other 11 tribes. There's nowhere it talks about this. This is just something that man started, thinking that they can get a little closer to our Father. Oh, well, if they're doing it, then I should do it too. Well, you know, there was a fellow that reached up and stopped the Ark of the Covenant that he thought was falling off a wagon. It was commanded to carry the ark. David did wrong by putting it on that wagon, and his best buddy there reached up because he thought it was going to fall off, and he fried. Okay, killed him, deader than a doornail. But he thought that he'd do better if he did what he thought he would want to do. And it killed him, and David was pretty upset over it, but he realized it was David's sin. He put that, you might not read that in the scriptures, but if you knew how it was supposed to be carried, David shouldn't have done it that way. It's the same thing as when Paul cast out the demon from the little girl, you know, that was full of these prophesying demons, you know, the divination and such, and he cast it out. He got his butt whooped. He realized afterwards, though it might not say, believe you me, he realized it because he knew that he shouldn't have done this. You don't lay hands on someone suddenly. And that's what he did. He laid hands on her suddenly, even though he may not have touched her. It's the same thing when you cast a demon out of someone that ain't been asking to have them cast out. You actually harm them, because if they have no desire to keep these laws and commandments, then when that wicked spirit comes back, he's going to find the place was swept clean. There ain't no demons there, but then he's going to realize, hey, there's nothing there to keep me from coming back. And he goes out and gets them 7 times worse, and they come back, and the state of that person is even worse. So Paul should have got his butt kicked. He should have never done that. There's things like that, these traditions and such that we should never do. Keep these things in mind, please. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 4. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head, dishonors the Messiah. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. They dishonor you, men. If you've got a wife that's praying without her head being covered, it's a dishonor to you. And it's a dishonor to our King. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. For that is one and the same as if her head were shaved. Okay, and once again, if a woman's walking down the street and she's praying to herself to pray always, as long as she's not raising her hands and everything like that, if she's just praying in her mind, in her heart, always praying, there's no problem with doing that. But if you're going to dedicate a certain time, like morning prayers, afternoon prayers, evening prayers, after gym class prayers, whatever, make sure the women, you have a head covering on to do that. But if you're in jail or something and don't have nothing, pull a sheet over your head, You can still cover with your head covered, or pray with your head covered. There are ways you can do it. You can probably even put your hands on your head. If you really have a need and you don't have a headscarf with you, cover your head. Cover it. If it's a specific type thing. But if you're praying all the day long, I'm thankful for the tree not falling on my butt and squishing me when I went by. It just fell over when I left. When I walked by, a branch fell off. Thank you for not, keep it inside though, okay? Pray in your heart. I hope you're getting the idea of this. Anyway, let's read 1 Corinthians 11:5 again, because I want to keep this short enough for people to listen. But every woman who prays or prophesies and women will prophesy. Deborah was a judge. No man, they were all pussies, man. They wouldn't take the job as a judge, so a woman had to do it. So this woman wasn't even the weaker vessel that spoke of in other places where men take that all out of context too. My bride, she's far from a weaker vessel. She's stronger than most anybody I know on this planet. I look up to her, and I should, because she is my body, and I have control over her body. But she honors our King so much, there's nothing I got to tell her to do. She's already doing it, I can maybe coax her on to other things. That's lawful, but this woman, man, the moment you tell her, she's headstrong. She says, I'm going to do that, and you can't stop her, I'll tell you. That's how you all should be. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. For that is one and the same as if her head were shaven, which goes into, a woman having long hair, which we're going to get into. Here, I brought a video on this, so this is adding to that video. Please listen to those ones again. But if you're going to pray without your head covered, women, whether you're married or unmarried or not, if you're doing this in the manner I was speaking, then you might as well take a razor and cut off your hair. Now, some women out there wouldn't mind doing that because they don't even know what it means to have a woman's head shaven. And then some of them probably would have their head shaven out of pride anyway, because a lot of times that's exactly what they are, is what their shaven head is showing. But for you, if you're actually trying to follow our King and our Father and walk in their ways, then this should be a problem for you. It really should. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn. Let her be shaved. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shaved or shorn or shaved, let her be covered. See, it talks about a prostitute or whatever. A harlot should have her head shaved. That's what you are if you're praying without your head being covered, ladies. Please, don't get angry with me. Get angry with yourself and repent. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or shaved, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of Yahweh. But woman is the glory of man. For man is not from woman, but woman from man. They're the rib from Adam, okay? Nor was man created for the woman, but woman for the man. And this is another reason I can't understand why the Jews will look at a woman side of a family for their heritage or bloodline or whatever. It's not from a woman. Yes, man comes out of the womb of a woman, but woman was from man. Okay? It says, nor was man created for the woman, but woman for the man. For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the Malachim. Now, it is a symbol of authority. So it's not a degrading thing at all, ladies, to wear a head covering. It's an honorable thing. You honor your head, and you also show you have authority. Yes, you have authority from your head, who gets his authority from the king. So it's a wonderful thing for you to do. For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the Malachim. Nevertheless, neither is man independent of the woman, nor woman independent of the man in the Messiah. For as woman came from man, even so man also comes through woman, but all things are from our Father, and now through the Son, our King. Judge among yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to Yahweh through Yahshua with her head uncovered? But if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her. It is. It's beautiful, man. The longer my bride's hair gets, man, the more I'm glorified and honored in it. She is so beautiful. And if she couldn't grow hair, she'd be just as beautiful. Does not even nature itself tell you? Or actually, let's get back up to where it says here. It says, nevertheless, man, for as woman came from man, even so man also comes through woman, but all things are from Yahweh. Judge among yourselves, is it proper for a woman to pray to Yahweh with her head uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? I brought the video on that. It's not speaking of this at all. It's talking about those little curly cues that the Jews and such are wearing, or braiding it with pretty bow ties and stuff, or whatever. Tie your hair back, man. If it gets in the way or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't need to be braiding it and such. That's for a woman to do with her hair. You men don't need to do these things. That's what it's talking about. Nature itself telling you these things are, not proper. In verse 15 of Corinthians 11 says, but if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. Yes, it's even for a covering, but you need to cover that as well, even with your hands if you got to, okay? But that's when you're outwardly praying in front of others, or when you're giving your moments of time in total dedication to just pray, morning prayers, whatever. Absolutely, make sure your head is covered. If you're out there walking around, there are laws coming out that people aren't supposed to wear headscarves or veils or things of this sort, and to keep from getting killed, you might not want to do that. You don't have to make an example of yourself. Our King recognizes that, when you're praying out there, put your hands over your head. People expect that. They might be looking around like, well, what the hell she got her hands on her head for? What's she see that I don't see? Well, let them wonder. cover your head. If that's how you do it, you could just sit down and just cover your head and pray if that's the way you feel better, if you can't wear a head covering at the time that you feel need to do it. But pray always, people, okay? And men, don't cover your head to pray. If you're out there in the desert and you got to have your head covered, well, take it off if you're dedicating yourself to that moment of prayer, that you're dedicating yourself fully to it. But pray always. And there's nothing wrong with putting that head covering back on to keep the sand out of your hair when you're praying always. And let's not do the repetition. I hope that, this clears things up for people a little bit. We should pray always. There's examples for us to do that. Women, please wear a head covering when you pray at those moments especially. But if you're out and you really need to pray and you don't have your head covering, use your hands, okay? Men, you should pray always and never wear a head covering in dedication for that purpose, for praying. Don't ever wear a prayer shawl over your head or whatever. These prayer shawls were for the Levites anyway. It wasn't for everybody else, and it was for when they was in service in the temple. It's like wearing a uniform. If you're not a cop and you wear a uniform, you can be put in jail. If you're like imitating or imposturing as a cop, you can be put in prison. It's not to be done. So don't try to be, those that are supposed to be Levites and such. No, men, don't pray with your head covered at all. You have a covering. It's our king. If you put something else there, you dishonor him. You're saying, you're not my king. I've got my king. I got my little prayer shawl, my little keeper, or whatever. So let's please repent. Consider these things. I love y'all. I hate what you do. Unless you're repenting, then I love that you have sinned and realize you did. And I'll be there to help you repent, man. I really will. Anything you need spiritually, please ask. I'm here. I'll always be here until I'm not. Okay? But let's get to the kingdom together. Each of us together in unity.